you winning the '99 Bud Shootout at Daytona, and that was a big deal for you because your history at Daytona did not like racing there. I mean, do you have any memories or recollection from that race? I mean, it had to feel good to win, knowing your history there.
Yeah, it was really pretty special. I don't remember where we started from, but um, if you look at the history of my starts and all those shootouts or clash, in my mind, I start on the last row every race because you draw, and I am without question way less lucky than anybody else. Or the year that I did draw the front row, I had the slowest car in my history down there. So, I never seemed like I had a good start. Was always a real challenging race. And it's funny you ask, this is going to freak people out, but you ask about my memories of it. The memory I have of that race is, you remember 1997 at Talladega when we won the caution free race and I ran the qualifying shocks. And they were Bilsteins because the Penske's rode rougher than the Bilsteins at the same force. So I felt like they might handle better on the long run because they didn't jerk the cars bad. Well, in '99 for the shootout, I had a mild version of those uh, Bilsteins on there. So that's what I remember. Uh, and of course, I remember winning the race. Afterwards and going to victory lane, it being a big relief. It had been over 10 years, and I hadn't been in contention to win hardly anything there up until that point. So it was cool.
Yeah, I remember, being in Victory Lane with my cousin Austin and mom and everything. So it was really neat. That's what I recall from it. But so how much different was your setup in the race? Do you recall for the 500 compared to the Bud Shootout?
And it's funny, I don't remember. I don't know. I don't remember running those shocks in the 500, but they were a milder version, so they didn't ride as rough. We were still, the racetrack was still really rough in '99. So, we were very much tuned into handling. So I think we used more of a handling shock for the 500. Uh, Spring wise and all would have been the same. It would have been just a two. So we had that race, and then we would have the 125 or 150 mile the duels on Thursday, and the racetrack after the duels becomes much more slick than the Sunday before the 500. Like the shootout was always run the Sunday before the 500, and the racetrack wasn't slick back then, and it was a lot about speed and less, very much less about handling. But by the time Thursday rolls around, the racetrack and all the activity by then would be getting it slick, and so Thursday you would figure out that your car didn't handle good enough, and you'd spend Friday and Saturday trying to get it to handle better without sacrificing speed. So, we may have tuned weight distribution or a little bit of something like that to try to get the car to handle better, but I don't remember the details.
So I rewatched part of the 1999 Daytona 500 this morning, and let's see if this jogs your memory a little bit. So looked like you were, running pretty good. Stayed in the top 10 for most of the race, it seemed. And then with about 25 laps to go, you got caught up in a big wreck. Does that sound like your typical Daytona 500?
Yeah, which year?
Yeah,
That sounds like most years.
yeah, yeah. To me, that was your typical Daytona 500, at least in the six car.
Yeah, I in early on when it was more of a handling race, you know, uh, I had other bad luck. We lost engines one year when they dropped the jack to leave the pits. I sheared the pinion right off right off, sheared it right off. The car didn't move. It just revved up and just broke the gear off. I don't know how you do that, but it happened to me. And I remember, waiting for them to change the gear in the car and looking out there at the cars running and just thinking, man, I should be out there. But a lot of times it was the wrecks. I couldn't believe the 500 back then was so much longer. There was so much attrition, like not wrecks. I'm talking about engine failures, rear end failures, electrical failure. Oh, there was more attrition back then. And you'd be watching a race knowing that my car was a seventh place or 10th place car, and you'd see almost all of those guys that were better than you fall out of the race. And you're thinking, yeah, if I could have just stayed in this thing, you know? But yeah, it was just really frustrating. And it therefore got the World Center of Pain name for me.
Do you remember when you coined that term, when you started using that term exactly?
I don't. It was accumulation of,
Yeah.
defeats at Daytona that have just, I just, I wasn't fast enough, would go down there and test for 3 days and not have speed and go home and go back. And it just felt like I was taking a spanking every time I went down there.
Probably my favorite Daytona 500 story of yours is the 1990 Daytona 500. Do you want to tell that story? Where you drank the cup of coffee before the
Oh,
race?
oh yeah. So 1990 was the first year I was sponsored by Folgers, and I wasn't really a coffee drinker uh, at all. And I had hospitality and went to the Folgers hospitality tent, meet and greet people and stuff. And I had a cup of coffee, and that was unique for me. And I during the race, I needed to go to the bathroom. So always the last thing I did after intros would go straight to the porta john, and hit it right before we went to climb in the car. That was my ritual routine. And I had done that, but oh my God, I needed to go so bad. I was in pain. Uh, would have been happy to just go right in my seat, but I couldn't because it's just too much intensity. You couldn't. Oh lordy! So anyway, we finished the race, and back then, um, we went into what was at that time the Bush garage and went around then to the Cup garage. And so as soon as I went through the gate where the Bush garage was, of course the Bush cars were gone. There were porta johns right there at that gate, and I knew that from because I'd run the Bush car too, and I was back and forth, so I knew where. So I parked right there in front of the porta johns, got out, and I went in the porta john and used the bathroom, and it seemed like it took 15 minutes because I was still in so much pain that I still couldn't relax. And yeah, that was a lesson learned. I never drank a cup of coffee again ever in my career before a race.
Well, you wouldn't even drink like any fluids like 2 hours or so before a race, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just I stayed hydrated all the time until race day morning. And then race day morning, I started to restrict so that I could get through the race without having to go. But then I did hydrate during the race. So it wasn't like I would get dehydrated because I would hydrate during the race. And as you sweat, that really changes how much you have to when you sweat as much as we did back then, I would lose, you know 7 pounds. I weighed 120 and would lose 7 pounds, 8 pounds, and that was all fluid. And so, a lot of times you didn't need the urge to go in the car because you were sweating so much.
So getting back to 1999, when you guys came back to Daytona for the July race, you got injured in happy hour and pretty bad. Why don't you tell us about that?
So, yeah, it was the final practice on Friday. Um, Final practice, and I had a really good car. I thought I had a better than usual car down there. The car was driving really good, and I was out there in the pack, and then I had dropped back to toward the back of the pack because I was going to come in. I did that on the front straightaway because I was going to run down the backstretch. Jack always liked a clean cut, which is running wide open and then shut it off. And that way he could read the spark plugs. So I was going to run wide open down the backstretch and then shut it down and come in. Well, when I went into one, the right front blew, and I was running middle of the track, so I wasn't running the high side. And I hit the wall hard. I mean, you wouldn't think it, but it was one of the more brutal hits. And the car just stayed in the wall and just grinded. It broke the brake rotor and everything, and so it just grinded to a halt on the early part of the backstretch. It went all the way through turn two and out onto the backstretch. And I got out right away. And as soon as my foot hit the ground, I got dizzy. I mean, dizzy, like I was afraid I might fall down. I still didn't think anything of it. I just thought, man, I took a beating here. But, then I started feeling the pain in my wrist and in my knee. So, of course, they took me to the infield care center. I didn't complain about my knee. Uh, but I did my wrist. They X-rayed the wrist, and I heard them in there talking. They were in the other room analyzing the X-ray, and my heart sank into my stomach. I said, "Yeah, it's broken." And so uh, they come in there, and I already knew what they were going to tell me. So we put a splint on it, which was just a plastic thing, under my palm and up to here, and then they wrapped it up, and that was that. Um, and so I went back to the coach, and of course I was going to race Saturday night. That was Friday afternoon or Friday night, and of course I was going to race Saturday. So, the guys get the backup car ready and starter in the back, and don't run as good as I would like to. And I'm really, 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 really miserable. By the way, I also did, fracture a rib too, which is really painful, but there's nothing you can do about it. So between, my rib and my wrist, which was hurting, I couldn't grip the steering wheel right with that splint on, and it was my wrist was killing me trying to hold the steering wheel, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I'm pretty grumpy at this time in my career. By the 90s, I'm grumpy all the time, but extremely grumpy when things aren't going well and I'm not running good enough and I'm in serious pain. So I'm like, give me a pair of scissors on the next caution. And so I come in, pit, they hand me a pair of scissors, and I cut that splint off. And then I'm like, what do I do with the scissor? Because I cut it off after the pit stop. So I drive out. So I'm on the racetrack, on caution, cutting this thing off. I cut it off. And then I'm like, what do I do with these scissors? Well, I don't want to throw them over there, because then they'd be flopping around in the car. I can't have that. I got to put them. So I stuck them underneath my legs, underneath my seat.
Oh my God, man.
Well, that's the best thing I can figure out
Yeah,
what to do with them.
yeah.
And so I did, and ground it out. I think I finished 17th, which some people think was pretty good under the circumstances, but I thought it was horrendous. But yeah, that was a story. I finished the race with the scissors under me in my seat. So, uh, and there's more to the story. So, damn if my knee didn't hurt more on Sunday, and he hurt even more on Monday. So finally, I told Benny Ertel that worked for me, because he knew all the doctors. Uh, he knew the doctor that actually wound up doing my back fusion. And so he got a MRI lined up on Tuesday, because I mean this knee is the problem. It ain't my wrist. And so we go get an MRI, and on Wednesday morning I load Matt up in a quarter midget and a couple of boys that work for me, and we go to the quarter midget track in Orlando to test. Orlando's an hour from Daytona, or a quarter midget track is at least. And so we're out there testing, and I'm hobbling around. This thing's hurting. And I get a phone call. My phone rings. It's Benny. Mark, Dr. Comer wants you to go straight to the hospital. Now, you got your knees broke. And so, I had to pack up and head for the hospital. I went to the hospital, and that was Wednesday afternoon. They put a screw in the tibula plateau. And if you thought it was sore on Wednesday, you should have seen how bad it hurt on Thursday. I mean, this was one of the most painful things I'd ever done. And Arlene wasn't very proud of my decision, but of course, Thursday, the next day, I get on my plane and go to New Hampshire for the race. And she didn't go. So I went up there, took Benny with me, and I went up there and stayed in the motorhome by myself on crutches, couldn't walk, in magnificent pain. And Friday morning, I go up to the garage area, and the boys have to lift me in the car for practice. And they push it out of the garage, and I put it in first gear, and I started in first. And I right foot brake in practice, and never use the clutch. I don't use the clutch at all. So I started in gear and drive it off, and we do our practicing. And then it was time for qualifying, and NASCAR wouldn't let Benny drive me. If you know where the garage area is in New Hampshire, well, qualifying, you left at the end of pit road, the other end of the racetrack. It was about a half a mile, and they wouldn't let Benny take me down there on a golf cart. So I had to walk down there to go qualify. And I remember that being the most painful, one of the most painful weekends. That Friday was. I got through practice on Saturday, and then on Sunday I used it for the clutch, uh, and did the clutch. But I guess we ran okay. There again, not spectacular, but we didn't lose. I was chasing a championship. I wasn't going to ever give up a spot, much less a race. And so we did it. And we got better after a while, but years later, damn thing started hurting again. And I went and saw Comer, and he said, "Dang, that screw's backing out." So they took the screw out then at that point. But whoever has a screw put in their bone and it backs out? Only me, I guess. I don't know.
You,
It's pretty
yeah.
crazy.
Well, yeah, it's pretty wild, man. And after that Daytona race, as far as your finishes go, if you just look at them on paper, I mean, you wouldn't think that your injuries really affected your performance that much. But I mean, I would think that they certainly had to, at least the next couple races. But you still had good finishes. But what's so surreal to me though is when you watch those clips back, is that all the commentators are bragging on you, like they're hyping up that you're hurt and injured and that your guys have to put you in the car and take you out. And it's like, that is, dude, today, like, there's that's just night and day, man. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, NASCAR wouldn't even let you race if that happened today. I
Yep.
mean, now you would be forced to take off, but it's just totally different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just amazing that how he lived. I mean, it wasn't just me. I mean, Ricky Rudd, pulling his eyelids up because they were so swollen. I mean, that's just what you did. That's just what you did back then. Nobody missed a race for any reason, unless it was really a bad break. I mean, you had Kyle Petty and Darrell Waltrip have serious broken legs where they didn't race. But you know, even what was almost 20 years before that, when in my late model, when I broke my left foot and ankle in four places, I raced again in 30 days, and I had to put a hand clutch in the car so that I could do pit stops. Um, so it just was a different era, and that's one of the things that's interesting for our fans to listen to today is because, if you think 1999 was a wild era, you should look at 1969 before my time. I mean, these guys drove these cars that were, I mean, the cars were not safe in 99 at all, especially for the speed, but gosh, in 1969 it was insane. It was all about how fast can we make this car go, and no attention at all really given to safety.